Hello, I'm Rosanna Riley-Runte, President and CEO of the Canada Foundation for Innovation. Je suis la présidente de la Fondation canadienne pour l'innovation. Et aujourd'hui,
Today we had a short talk between teachers and students.
This is the CFI's 25th anniversary. And rather than pat ourselves on the back one more time for all the great things that have happened that have been done by researchers across the country, we thought we'd look at the future and the people who are just starting to be researchers, young researchers, and the relation that they have with their professors and their mentors. And mentoring is a very special art. Way back in the 17th century, Fenelon wrote a book. It was the first time I ever saw the word mentor. And the book was a mentor speaking to the future king, teaching him how to be king. And in a way, that's what mentors do. They are teachers. They teach people how to make the right choices, how to think, how to be good researchers. And so it's a real pleasure to welcome you to this session where we have two researchers and two students. D'abord, il y a Marie-Josée Hébert.
Vice Rector to the Discovery, Creation in Innovation. That's a great title, by the way. She's in the University of Montreal, graduate in Specialized Studies in Nephrology at the University of Montreal. She studied
Brigham William Women's Hospital à Harvard. Elle est à la faculté de médecine, spécialiste en
the medical faculty specialized in nephrology and investigator specialized in transplantation, one of the founders of the National Program Research in Transplantation in Canada. She co-directed that program during many years, and she was rewarded Dusseter Prize and Excellency Awards. She's member of the Royal Society and member of many research organizations. She has been titled Vice President of the investigation to the main universities in Canada. She was awarded the best scientific by the press.
And I'm going to ask Marie-Josée to introduce her student, Alexandre.
Merci beaucoup, Rosanne. C'est vraiment un plaisir d'être avec vous tous aujourd'hui. Mais je ne suis pas membre de la Société royale du Canada.
Very much. I'm not a member of the Royal Society of Canada. I wouldn't take a title than her, but I'm a member of the Health Academy and Science of Canada. That's the main difference. And it's a great pleasure for me to introduce you, Alexandre Atrodeur, who is in Master in Biological Studies in the University of Montreal under my supervision in the University of Montreal. And that's it. It was great to have Alexandre as a student in my team, and we didn't want him to go away from us.
And Jeff Don is at Dalhousie University, where he's an emeritus professor and principal investigator for an NSERC Alliance grant. He did his undergraduate work at Dalhousie, a little bit like you, Marie-Josée, started at the same institution where he was working. But he did his PhD at UBC. And worked and taught in British Columbia, finally returning to Dalhousie as a 3M NSERC chair. He's won the Hertzberg Gold Medal, which is really an impressive award. It's like the next step to the Nobel Prize, I think. He won the inaugural Governor General's Innovation Award, Fellow of the Electrochemical Society, and he also was named a Professional of Distinction in the Nova Scotia Discovery Centre, and he won an award, a medal from the Association of Physicists for being an excellent teacher. And his specialty is lithium-ion batteries. And Jeff, would you like to introduce Tina?
Certainly. Thanks, Roseanne. Yeah, so Tina Taskovic is a graduate student. She came from Trent University in Peterborough. I think she's been in the group about 4.5 years now, so she's working on her PhD. And it's really interesting selecting students, and we interview students. I think in Tina's case, she came to visit us. It was before the pandemic, and I remember talking to her about her hobbies, and one of them was kickboxing, and that just made the decision for me, because this is somebody that has vigor and is tough-minded and so on. So that's one of the reasons that I think Tina was selected to come and join us in the group.
Well, that leads to an interesting question. Tina, how did you pick Jeff?
Oh my goodness. Yes, so as you kind of mentioned, Jeff won that Herzberg medal, and actually I first heard about it through a podcast, Quirks and Quirks on CBC. He was being interviewed by the host there, and I was like, oh my goodness, I had no idea that we had such a renowned research group here in Canada and talk about batteries, because I knew I wanted to kind of move into something to do with energy and definitely tackling the problem of climate change. And, you don't have to look far and see that energy storage is a major issue that we have to, deal with in terms of that. So, that was kind of the how I kind of heard about Jeff. And now I'm here.
So did it take courage to go and meet him, or did you have your kickboxing shoes on?
Yeah, he's making me sound very, very tough. I'm a nice person, I swear. Come talk to me. But so actually it did take quite a lot of courage. And I remember being so particular about when I should send the email, like, should I send it, in the morning or in the afternoon? Like, introducing myself to him. And it just, you always need it's always a little bit, discomfort that you kind of have to go through, and to get any results. I think Jeff always says to us, anytime we ask him about pursuing any opportunity, he says, you can't win without a ticket, so you just kind of have to take that first step or first leap, into something, and, just kind of see what happens. So.
Et Alexandre, comment est-ce que vous avez rencontré Marie-Josée? Est-ce que vous étiez dans sa classe?
Students of her, did you just go to talk to her? A little bit of both. When I met Marie-Josée, I was in another university, in Sherbrooke University. I was studying my bachelor degree, and I found an internship, and thanks to that internship I could meet Marie-Josée. And when I was about to start my internship, I entered her team, and I started to talk to Marie-Josée for graduate studies after my bachelor degree. Would you have any advice to give other teachers who are going to start such a mentorship project? Advice? Well, I don't know. Maybe I can talk about the way I went there. Maybe one needs to be open-minded to adapt themselves to all the students, to their aspirations and their specificities. One must accept them and be sure to be eager to work with them, and to be sure that we all give the best of ourselves, not trying to have a kind of robot portrait of success. I think every single one has to find his or her pathway to success, and it's a personal success as well, not only in terms of career. Personal success is important, and I think the atmosphere within the group is important, with an atmosphere which can create cooperation and shows the interest that everybody has to be respectful, to help each other. And these are the very first steps to welcome all the students. But I do think as well that it's a challenge to work with students with different backgrounds. Generally, one is looking for the students with A everywhere, who tick all the single boxes. But I think that students, Alexander, for example, has a very specific background. He stopped school, then he came back. And I think that was really important for the whole team. It was really enriching for the whole team, and we had to work with Alexander to give our best, and it was great studies for Alexander. One must be open-minded and respect everybody and work with every student's specificities.
Jeff, you are the image of the calm and smiling there, but I know you're always under pressure and you've got deadlines and so many things on your mind. What advice would you give to professors when they know they've got so many students and so many deadlines and so much they have to do, but a student wants to be mentored? What advice would you give the professor?
Well, that's a pretty darn good question. I had a student here. His name is Zonghai Chen, and we would talk about his research, and he would always, at the end of our conversation, he would say, "I need to work more and think more." And that's sort of a silly thing to say in some respects, but it's kind of true. You have to focus your mind on the things that are in front of you and really work effectively. It's really important to figure out how to separate your work from your family life. I certainly was not very good at that when I was younger. I'm quite good at it now. And it's hard for young professors with families and to do all the things they need to do and still be effective with their family. I have a research assistant who has 2 young boys. She's a grant-paid researcher, but she told me, "Listen, I feel like I'm a crappy researcher and a crappy mom because I don't have time to do either one properly at the moment." And this is what people face. It is what it is. So you really have to do the best you can.
Alexandre, what difference did Marie-Josée make to you in your studies and your career?
I would say that I started my graduate studies in a more personal gain, but after speaking with Marie-Josée and having the whole team actually really push my reasoning towards better understanding not only my project, but the implications of the findings that we're going through is really what I've gained and what I've learned from Marie-Josée as a mentor. So I think that's one of the greatest strengths. Yeah.
And Tina, how about you? What have you gained from your work with Jeff, personally, but also in terms of research, how you approach your research?
Oh wow, that's a big question. So I guess the professional side, like the research side of things, I mean, I've gained basically all of my basic knowledge of lithium-ion batteries joining this group. I didn't really had much opportunity to learn much electrochemistry or anything around this field at my place of my undergrad. It just wasn't a specialization there at the time. And so really, and then also now going to this new area where we're working on this kind of exciting project where it's kind of a little bit unknown, like, what else are we going to learn? So having Jeff there to help navigate and, guide us through that process is priceless, really. And then personally, I mean, I definitely think that I've gathered more confidence as I progressed. I started for my master's, now I'm PhD, and I think if I think back to when I just started here, I was kind of just like, I'm just here to absorb just tell me what to do. I don't want to break anything. You kind of that little bit anxious, feeling when you're starting off, especially moving from undergrad to grad, right? It's totally different. And so I think, yeah, just developing that confidence, not feeling so afraid to make a mistake, things like that. I mean, like not a catastrophic mistake, but trying to learn from what you've done in the past and build upon that. So and then also, I mean, definitely personally too, just developing writing skills is really important, especially in academics. It's so important. So Jeff is really helpful from that. Always giving good feedback, timely feedback too, which is sometimes with as you mentioned, deadlines and stuff, that could be an important thing. So yeah, kind of all the soft skills and the hard skills of science too, right? So yeah.
Jeff, mentoring students really tends to go beyond the time that they are going to pass their exam or they're going to turn in that thesis. It can be a lifelong project. Could you talk to us a little bit about your ongoing relationships with the students you've mentored?
Yeah, certainly. So I probably have over 50 or 60 PhD students out in the field, and they maintain pretty close contact. And when they think about a career change, they'll often check in and say, does this make sense, or should I consider doing this? And that's nice that they are interested in my advice. We have a spin-off company here in Halifax called Novonics. It has 8 of the former people that have come from my lab that are in the company, of about 65 people here in Halifax. And I check in with those guys quite a lot and, give advice on projects that are going on at the company. So it's nice to keep contact with all of them and try to be useful in a mentorship type of role. I mean, it's funny. I don't ever say, "Oh, I'm going to be a mentor now." you be yourself, right? And if someone asks you for advice, you give it. And if you have something useful to say, I think it's well taken.
Et Marie-Josée, votre expérience, c'est pareil?
Ah oui, c'est pareil. Mais c'est pareil, mais c'est toujours, certains de mes étudiants sont devenus des collaborateurs, des partenaires là, très, très étroits là, de l'équipe de labo, puis des amis, des gens qu'on retrouve dans des conférences scientifiques. Et puis,
You meet again in different conferences and you feel like you only saw them last week, because we are building very close relationships. They talk to you about their new employment, etc. So it's really interesting to see how those people can develop themselves scientifically and as a person, and to think that maybe we had a little influence, a little role to play in there. We are not talking about that with passion. At some point, it's something really precious in a researcher career to be in contact with all our graduated students, not only throughout the studies, but after that, just to keep the relation and to see how they evolve and how they flourish. Marie-Josée, you talked a lot about your team, but I think your team become as a great family for you, isn't it? So, Alexander, could you talk to us about this idea, this great family and the human relationships we are sharing while researching, that helps us a lot in our journey through research, because research, not every day we are saying, "Oh yeah, I found something, I discovered, eureka." At some point, maybe there are some difficult moments and you are in distress at some point, maybe. So did Marie-Josée and the team, this great family, did they support you? Yes, in my personal projects, we almost abandoned research after some failure, but through perseverance and the help of the whole team and the meetings and the conversation we have during the working hours and after the working hours, we can create kind of a team spirit which is very tight and very strong, and that's how one can go throughout the main obstacles in research.
Tina, sometimes people see movies or they look at pictures in the book of people in white coats, and they all usually have masks these days, and they're not talking and they're very serious. And I think that research is also fun. It's also a team. It's also discovering things together. And how important is that togetherness? How important is it that there is a kind of a team that gets built?
Yeah, well, it's incredibly important. You gotta have a good atmosphere to work in, right? You gotta enjoy coming to where you're going to spend a good portion of your days, and I think fostering a really good environment where it's feel free to ask anyone any questions, if there needs some clarification, have those kind of maybe informal chats in the hallway, but sometimes they really do lead to maybe I didn't think of this issue I had in my experiment before this way. And so it really helps to have kind of that kind of team effort, cordial sometimes joking kind of atmosphere with your colleagues, to really make yourself kind of just enjoy life a little bit while you work, but also really learn something from someone else who maybe has just a different perspective from you. So yeah, I mean, having a great work environment's you gotta have to have that, right? Really to make really good work.
Jeff, is it different with undergraduates and graduates, or are they graduate and undergraduate students about the same?
They're different, I guess. The graduate students have a bit more experience, but we have lots of undergrads that work in our lab. And they come in knowing really nothing about our field, but actually the graduate students, when they come in, they know nothing about our field either. So they all go through a sort of what we call the boot camp process, where they're mentored by more senior students and postdocs to learn all the lab operations. And when they do that, they get exposed to different projects in the group, and they can sort of figure out, oh, I'd like to work on this, or I'd like to work on that type of thing. So really, I don't think there's too much difference in the students that I've seen. We've had very good undergrads, of course, but our graduate students are good too. So they all operate effectively.
Et Marie-Josée, quand un étudiant ou une étudiante vient vous voir et dit oh, je crois que j'aurais besoin de quelqu'un qui me conseille, etc. Quel conseil est-ce que vous leur donnez?
Mais ça dépend du type de conseil. C'est sûr que moi, je rencontre mes étudiants bien régulièrement. Des fois, je pense qu'ils aimeraient ça que je les rencontre moins régulièrement. Non, je blague. Mais donc, chaque semaine, on se voit, on se parle. D'ailleurs, ça, j'aurais quelques commentaires autour de la pandémie parce que ça nous a démontré aussi jusqu'à quel point nos étudiants ont besoin je pense, du directeur de labo là, comme mentor, mais de toute l'équipe, incluant le personnel hautement qualifié. Moi, j'ai la chance d'avoir 2 associés de recherche, des techniciens, des assistants de recherche, des techniciens de labo et des plateformes de recherche. Où est-ce que là, il y a du personnel hautement spécialisé, donc plateforme dans le centre de recherche.
Research, and then we have all of this staff, and they're all going to take part in the work. For mentoring, but also for troubleshooting that when the experience is not all working, when we really have to find the way to to really advance the project. And often we imagine it's usually the director, the lab director who is going to be doing that, but it's all this group of people who are going to be making a difference. It's about finding the right person to whom go to talk, and it's about finding what works and how we can analyze that as an element of the discovery process. And we as mentors, our work is to help our student to really analyze what works, and also to find the best and to be a guide in this kind of labyrinth that can allow us to move forward. It's not just us, we must all be there around it. And this is going to become an enterprise that is really going to become really passionate.
Tina, what advice would you give to your fellow students? Would you tell them to go out and get a mentor right away? How would you tell them to pick one? How important is it? What would you say?
Oh, wow. Well, I think you've first got to be clear about, what are you interested in? Like with, make sure you're aware of that, so you're not kind of flip-flopping a little bit, right? Because I think that's a bad situation where you're going in one way and then you're like, actually I care about this, and then maybe your mentor can't help you as much in that area. So I think personally you kind of have to know what you want, what you want out of the mentorship, like baseline there. I would also say, especially talking about academic lab, reach out to other students in that lab. It's a very common advice when you're interested in any research lab, like talk to students there, see how the work environment is there, what to expect from your PI, your principal investigator, or generally with the degree program you're in, because in my lab, we're not just all chemistry students, we're engineering, physics, so that might be interesting too. So it's just good to be one, make sure you know what you want out of like a mentor, and then two, make sure you do your research and see if it's a good fit. Yeah.
Est-ce que vous êtes d'accord, Alexandre?
Alexander, do you agree? Well, I'm going to rebound on Tina's remark. In this case, we have this approach of outreaching to the students mainly, and then we can have people who are really focused on science, who are working on the cells, and who can see the impact of our research at animal and even a human level. And a result that I could use in terms of the piece of advice I give my students at the lab, well, is the time of making questions. And usually we must have researchers, and it's really impressive and intellectually speaking, and because there are no bad questions, so maybe we can focus on a student that may seem a little bit lost. So that's the main piece of advice that I could give you.
So one day I was walking to a university in Toronto, and I ran into Ursula Franklin, who's a very famous woman professor of engineering and archaeology as well. And she had a box from a bakery in her hand, and I said, "What is it?" And she said, "Oh, this is my students' favorite Chinese cookies." And I said, "Oh, that's nice." And she said, when I mentor my students, there are some days when you've got to start with a cookie. Do you have any secret sauce, Jeff and Marie-Josée? Chinese cookies or?
I don't have any really secret sauce along those lines, I would say. My wife says, "Oh, you're not very empathetic," so maybe she's right along that line. But I try to motivate students by getting excited about their work, and I think that's probably more important than a cookie, actually. And that would be my advice for people.
I agree. Marie-Josée?
Exactly at the same place. And for me, there's nothing else in the world that matters than a student that comes like knocking on my door and saying, I have this result and I think it's great, and just sharing the excitement, because this, you know, there are lows, but there are very highs, like there are ups and downs. The downs can be quite low, but the ups, and we need to cherish those moments, and we need to kind of cherish the passion that, and share, you know, the passion, and that's contagious. That's contagious. We like this contagion, you know, sharing the passion for science, and very often I think that we don't talk about it. And the way that we really talk about, you know, writing grants and, oh, it's difficult and blah, blah, blah. We don't talk enough about kind of the passion of, I've got it, and I'm the first in the world to understand it. And, oh, it's just so exciting. There's no way to describe that. But when you can share it with your student and you feel that you're two crazy folks, you know, jumping around in the office or in the lab, you know, that magic happens then.
But what a great.
Can I just add to this? Marie-Josée has it right on. I call this the eureka moment. And we live for this. It's like the adrenaline rush is unbelievable. And you get maybe 5 or 6 of these a year, and it's contagious, and you live for it. And when it happens between a professor and a student, it's really magic.
I think you've inspired us all today, and I want to thank you so much. I hope that students that watch this across the country will go and find mentors like you, Marie-Josée and Jeff, and that they will also imitate you, Alexandre and Tina, in studying and getting inspired. And I think that you've actually really hit the nail on the head. It is about inspiration, not about cookies. Thank you.